Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us in one of our series of business immigration webinars. Before I introduce today's speaker, some housekeeping. Everyone is muted by default and your cameras are off, so you'll only be able to see the presenter speaking as opposed to other attendees in addition. You can click on the top bar with two arrows to maximize your screens should you wish to. There's also a chat function at the bottom. We've ensured that the chat is private, so you're welcome to ask as many questions as you would like. If you do have more specific or sensitive questions, our contact details are shared, and you're welcome to reach out to us directly for a free, no obligation conversation. Some questions may be answered while Darren is speaking. We'll then collate some of the more frequently asked questions in a Q&A style after his presentation. To give you a brief overview of us as Sable International, we are specialists in immigration and international financial services and have been providing a boutique range of services for over 30 years. We have offices around the world and are generally able to provide a bespoke, customer-centric service suited to a range of clients. To introduce today's esteemed speaker, Darren Fife, Darren has over 25 years' experience heading award-winning organizations and providing immigration and compliance services to large-scale multinational businesses. Having run his own successful immigration practice for over 20 years, Darren possesses a strong commercial mindset and provides an efficient delivery of strategic solutions. With his wealth of knowledge and experience, I have no doubt Darren will be able to provide us with some great insight into the UK's new global mobility visa routes. Without further ado, over to you, Darren.
Hi everyone, thanks for attending this afternoon. As Saskia has just mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about the new global mobility routes that the Home Office introduced just this past April. The routes are a combination of the Emperor's New Clothes, so we have some categories which have previously been covered by the points-based system and now kind of streamlined into this route. And we also have some new routes as well, which are additions to existing routes of entry to the UK for businesses. So we're going to touch upon all of these. The first of which is what they now call the senior or specialist worker route. This replaces the intercompany transfer route. We have a new category called the secondment worker. Another one for service suppliers, which individuals, professionals, contractors can avail themselves to. Graduate trainees, which there's always been in existence, and the UK expansion worker, which replaces the very old sole representative visa category. So we'll dive straight into the senior and specialist worker. As I mentioned, this really is a direct replacement for the intercompany transfer visa. There really isn't much new here at all. It's designed for individuals to come to the UK for normally a finite period, so it doesn't lead to settlement, residency, indefinitely to remain. It is a temporary capacity, and people ordinarily can come to the UK for up to 5 years within any 6-year period on this. The requirements is that the individual must have worked for the overseas sending company for at least 12 months. It is a transfer between one international office and another, so they are within the same group or under the same control or ownership, those two entities. And there is a minimum salary requirement of 42,400. If individuals are earning more than 73,900, it's what the Home Office considers to be a high earner. And those individuals do not have to have worked for the company for 12 months prior, so they can come straight in. So there are a couple of different ways of qualifying under this. The main advantage of the category is that there's no English language requirement. So for certain roles where there is a distinct need for language skills or the ability to maybe read instructions in a foreign language, the intercompany transfer route is quite helpful because it doesn't insist the individual can speak English to a certain level. As I mentioned earlier, the disadvantage is it doesn't lead to settlement, whereas a skilled worker does. I've just been told that you can't hear me so well. It could be because I'm using my headphones. I will take these off just for a moment. Sorry guys, I'll take these off and then see if it's any better through the mic.
Okay, can we now hear me? I hope so. Sorry about that. Okay, awesome. So yeah, with the senior or specialist worker, there's no English language requirement. So that's the major advantage of the category, that there's no need to take an English language test. But it doesn't lead to settlement, and there is a limitation on how long an individual can remain in the UK. So just moving on. So just to kind of illustrate that, the difference between the skilled worker, which is the normal route, which replaces the Tier 2 visa. The skilled worker doesn't need to have any previous experience overseas, whereas the senior or specialist worker does, ordinarily 12 months. But the main advantage of the skilled worker is that it does lead to residency. Whereas the skilled or specialist worker, the senior or specialist worker doesn't. There's no route to settlement, although you can switch from the senior or specialist worker to skilled worker whilst you're in the UK. So there is the ability now to change status. But essentially, the senior or specialist worker is a direct like-for-like replacement of the intercompany transfer visa. So not really much to report there, other than there's a change in terminology. The secondment worker is a new one. Now, this category is for a business sending one of their employees to a UK company that's part of an investment or a contract for goods or services. Now, the bar is set quite high here. So we're looking at business that's worth at least £10 million per year and no less than £50 million overall. So not, most businesses won't qualify for this unless it's big business. The individual, again, must have previous overseas experience. So the sending company can justify why they need to send this particular individual to the UK. They can stay up for up to 2 years. The difference here is there is no general salary requirement, whereas most of the worker categories are very prescriptive in the salary the individual must earn. But the individual must be qualified to degree level. So secondment worker is a new one. Unfortunately, a very small percentage of businesses will qualify for it. We've had a number of inquiries from companies saying, oh, actually, we've got a contract with a UK company for services. Can we send some people? We've heard about this new visa. The problem is they don't actually reach that bar of £10 million per year. So it's quite difficult to qualify. The service supplier category is an altogether new one. And this is for independent contractors or professionals working in the UK under a service contract. The individual company, the service provider from overseas, cannot have any UK presence, and the receiving company in the UK must have a sponsor license. Okay, so they must have a sponsor license that's valid in this category, and the individual can come to the UK for up to 12 months. Again, there is no salary requirement for this one because it's normally part of a service contract, so they're not prescriptive in that. But there are some requirements regarding the individual's skills and qualifications. First of all, the role can be on the Standard Occupational Classification Code list, and there is a specific list for these roles. If they're not on the list, then the individual must have the equivalent of a degree level education and at least 3 years professional experience, or 6 if they're self-employed. So again, it's quite narrow, but this does open a route of entry to the UK that wasn't previously there. So a lot of individuals are going to be quite interested in that. The applicant must be coming from the same country as the sending company. So again, if you are, for example, a South African national currently working in France, then you wouldn't qualify. But if you are a French national working in France, then you would qualify. So it's prescriptive in the fact the individual must have a certain nationality, or in certain cases must be at least a resident of the country where the company is based that's sending the individual. The graduate trainee scheme has been around for many years. It is designed for, again, normally your larger business, where they will have an established graduate recruitment scheme, and therefore they will have a program these individuals will go on, which may include international rotation. So there must be a structured program. The individuals would have normally started their program overseas, normally in their home country, completed 3 months before they can then come to the UK for up to 12 months. You'll see there is quite a low salary limit on this, not a threshold, but a limit. And that's to prevent employers from actually using this as a pathway to get easier entry for individuals coming to the UK and perform substantive roles. So it's particularly for our kind of grad level position. Now, the biggest change we've seen is on the UK expansion worker. Now, many of you may be familiar with the old sole representative visa, and this was designed for an overseas company with no established presence in the UK to give them the ability to actually set up and expand into the UK market. One of the requirements of this is that they had no presence, so they couldn't have any kind of trading presence in the UK, couldn't already have any kind of representation here, and this was going to be an individual sent from the overseas company, relatively senior, because they'd need the ability to make decisions on behalf of the business, and they would come to the UK, set up the business, and ultimately probably get a sponsor license, and then sponsoring people into the UK as they grow. Now, the biggest change here is that on the plus side, the expansion worker category can now have up to 5 people. So the company can send a team to the UK instead of only one particular individual. So they may send a senior management team to the UK to actually fulfill the function. The difficulty now we have is that the Home Office are saying, well, you now need a license before you can make your expansion worker application. So there's what used to be a single process where we would make an application to the entry clearance office in the person's normal country of residence. We now have a dual process where we initially have to make an application to the Home Office in the UK. The company needs to have registered with Companies House in order to do so, and they get what's known as like a provisional sponsor license. And only once that license is in place can we then apply for the expansion worker visa. So we have a dual process. Now, in order to get the license, we'll need to show that the incorporation has taken place with Companies House. We need to evidence the fact that the company is established in its home country, and we need to demonstrate that there is a credible business plan. So the Home Office would expect to see really a detailed business plan, financials, research, target market, etc. And any evidence that the company's been successful and is able to actually sustain the cost of establishing a branch in the UK. You'll see that there's a requirement that the company must have been trading for at least 3 years in its home country. And there are references to exceptions there. And there has been an agreement with Japan where a Japanese business doesn't need to show 3 years overseas trading. But the limitation on them is that they can only send one person to the UK. So that's interestingly kind of worst of both worlds, where they don't get the benefit of the 5 people, yet they still need to go through this process of getting a license, etc. So there's that they have to contend with. So it's an interesting development, and the Home Office said they've done this in response to, the old system not being agile enough for modern business, etc. And this is going to be a better way. But from what we've seen, it's been a more laborious process, more bureaucracy, and more time as well. So it's not been, I think, the panacea that a lot of companies looking to establish in the UK thought it might be. With the expansion worker, because we now need to get a license as well, we must have an authorising officer. For those of you that are familiar with the sponsor license application, there are certain roles that must be fulfilled in order to get that license with the Home Office. So you must have an authorising officer who is responsible for the sponsor management system, which will ultimately issue a certificate of sponsorship to allow the expansion worker to come to the UK. And then once the established business is up and running, we can then change that license to be a regular sponsor license to be able to sponsor any number of employees back into the UK. It's in many ways very similar to the old sole representative visa, aside from the fact we've got this license requirement in. So there is the ability for the Home Office to come in and inspect premises, look at your systems and processes, make sure that certificates of sponsorship are being issued correctly, etc. So there's quite a lot to it. The requirements for the individual are also much more prescriptive now. It's always been the case that the Home Office would expect the individual to have worked for the overseas sending company for at least 12 months. So that's not much of a change. But now there is a minimum salary requirement of 42,400. Ordinarily, that's not a problem anyway, because the individual is quite often going to be a director level or be generally a high earner. But the Home Office are expecting that the salary offered should be commensurate with the roles and the role and responsibilities given to that sole representative. So essentially, there are changes. It's, as I said, there's a combination of some new stuff, but a lot of it was already there, but they've just brought it into what the Home Office are very good at rebranding, and they seem to do this every 12 to 18 months. So this is partly a rebranding exercise, but there are some substantive changes in there too. I think that's pretty much me on these new categories. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Darren. You always manage to explain a lot of information in a very succinct way. So thank you. We do have quite a few questions. One of the first ones is, how does a senior worker visa differ from the intercompany transfer visa?
It really doesn't. It's essentially from what I can see, there are no substantive changes. The salary requirements are the same. The restrictions are the same. There are no changes to the individual's ability to apply for indefinite leave to remain, which is often the question for those that are here on intercompany transfers. There is still the ability to switch into skilled worker once in the UK in the category. So essentially, to all intents and purposes, it's exactly the same as the old ICT.
Perfect, thank you. Another question is, in terms of time frames between the expansion worker and the previous sole representative visa, how do they differ in terms of the amount of time?
So again, I mean, coming back to the Home Office statement as to the old scheme wasn't fit for purpose and it wasn't geared up for modern business, they seem to have taken a bit of a backward step here. So we could expect a sole representative visa to probably take between 3 to 5 weeks. In normal times, a visa application would take that time. I know things have been extended quite a bit recently because of the situation with Ukraine and the diversion of a lot of resources from the Home Office. But ordinarily, a sole representative would have been 3 to 5 weeks. Now we've got a process where we have to get a license. That license in itself, you could be looking at 8 to 12 weeks to get a first-time license. And that's assuming the Home Office don't make any kind of in-depth inquiries. So you've got 8 to 12 weeks to get the license, and again another 3 to 5 weeks on top of that to get the visa, if not a little bit longer at the moment. So it's gone from, as I said, 3 to 5 weeks to kind of 13 weeks now. It's 3 times as long and more expensive. So that's progress.
Perfect, thanks. If you switch from a senior or specialist worker visa to a skilled working visa, does that time that you've already been in the UK count towards settlement?
Unfortunately not. The stay on the ICT visa is a temporary visa. Actually, hang on a second. I'm just trying to think. I've just confused myself. Yeah, I don't think it is. I'm just trying to think now. But no, you need to complete 5 years on your skilled worker visa.
Perfect. 5 years on the skilled worker. Perfect. So any time on the global mobility routes doesn't count, which leads us on to the next question. Somebody's asking if the UK expansion worker counts towards settlement.
Yes. Well, naturally, they will spend up to 12 months on your expansion worker visa, and then switch into a skilled worker. So what would happen again? They would change category. They would get a new license that enabled them to get a skilled worker visa. Switch onto that, which would then lead to residency.
Okay. So the time would reset
Correct.
at the point they take out the skilled working visa. Perfect. 2 more questions. One is, can a shareholder of a foreign entity qualify for the UK expansion worker visa?
A shareholder can, but not a major shareholder. So the issue with these expansion visas, and the same with the sole representative, is that the Home Office expect the controlling mind of the business to remain overseas. So if you had a major shareholder, i.e. somebody with 51% or more transferring to the UK, the Home Office would be of the opinion, well, then the business has moved to the UK because the major shareholder's in the UK. So whilst you can have a shareholding, you can't have a majority shareholding. The majority shareholding must remain in the original country.
Perfect. Thank you. And then the last question, somebody's asked kind of what the benefits are that you see with UK expansion worker, a UK expansion worker sponsorship license versus a standard A-rated sponsorship license.
Ask the question again, sorry.
What benefits do you see to the UK expansion worker sponsorship license and going that route versus going the standard route and getting an A-rated sponsorship license under skilled worker?
Okay, well, the difference is that the A-rated license is only available if you are already established in the UK. So you would only apply for the expansion worker license if you were not already in the UK. So the expansion worker visa, the license is so you can establish, and then you would change that to a normal A-rated license afterwards. So you wouldn't normally have the choice of one or the other. You would only get the expansion worker license through necessity in order to establish the organisation in the UK. Then after that, you would change over to a regular license. So they're not. It's not one versus the other. It's one and then the other afterwards.
Perfect. I think that's all of our questions. So it looks like we'll probably end a bit early today. If you're in the UK, you can go enjoy the sunshine. We will share a recording of today's webinar, and all of our contact details will be in that email. So if anybody does have any further questions, then you're welcome to just reply to that email. And as always, we're always happy to offer a free, no obligation consultation.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time today.